Hey, hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo O. Hope you guys are doing good today. And it is a beautiful day outside. Absolutely gorgeous. April 28th. April is just about done. Yes, it's hard to believe that we are moving into another month already. It seems like we just started the year, so it's kind of weird that April's almost done. But hey, we get to go through another book of the Bible. We're in the book of Luke right now. We're kind of getting through it, so we're moving pretty good. Today's going to be Luke 16, not a big chapter. And this is the morning devotion with me, Bo Willett. You could always check out my archives at my YouTube channel at Bo Willett. Just go to YouTube, go to the search area and type in my name. It's right there in the top right. Or you can just go to bowillett.com and there is my catch-all kind of website. So anyway, had a great weekend, a really great day at church yesterday, and always awesome to be with everybody. And now we get to just start our day by getting in the Word a little bit. I love just reading through the scriptures. So important just to be in it. Everybody's in something. It's just, what are you in? That's always the question. Just what are you reading? What book are you in? But we're all in something. So this chapter starts off saying, Jesus told a story to his disciples. It says, there was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. One day, a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. So the employer called him in and said, what is this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you are going to be fired. The manager thought to himself, now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches and I'm too proud to beg. I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I am fired. So he invited each person who owned money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, how much do you owe him? The man replied, I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil. So the manager told him, take the bill and quickly change it to 400 gallons. And how much do you owe my employer? And he asked the next man, I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat, was the reply. Here, the manager said, take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. The rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd. And it is true that the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with the world around them than are the children of the light. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. If you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? So it's a very interesting parable. I love my friend David Guzik's, he has a video on this parable. So if you actually went to YouTube and you looked up David Guzik and you actually looked up this parable, you'll come up with a really cool video that he's done on it. And I've always appreciated it. It's a great breakdown of the parable. But really the point that Jesus is making is one that he talks about. So I don't have to make it up. I don't have to tell you what I think about it. Jesus says, hey, are you faithful? So today is something where I need to just work on my faithfulness. Am I faithful to God today? And he talks about being faithful with little things. You know, am I faithful with just the big things, or am I faithful with just all things? The things that maybe seem so small, but am I faithful with that? You know, and that's where I want my heart today, is just to be found faithful with whatever's before me. You know, sometimes you might be just in your house in the day. Well, am I faithful? Just kind of doing the mundane. Am I faithful in just what I need to do today, maybe in the home? You know, and then there's those grandioso things, you know, that outreach or that other thing that you're doing, right? That ministry. You know, am I faithful with that too? Notice he talks about being honest, you know, and then that honesty just being someone who's honest can lead us to greater responsibility. Am I a person who's faithful? Am I a person who has honesty? Am I a person who can share? I imagine there's a lot of people, even in the church environment, that would rather have dishonesty than honesty. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we're honest, we don't like that because we find it, in a sense, conflicting. We can see that, like a lot of us, we want to feel like we're in control. And when people are honest with us, they might disagree with us. They might say something that we don't necessarily want to hear. They might have even a criticism of me or you, or, and we don't want to hear that. A lot of times we would rather just live in kind of a fairy tale land, like a Peter Pan land, where, there's not much honesty going on. Of course, no one wants to hear, mean honesty, someone just being mean, right? Oh, I'm being honest, but you're being rude and you're being crude and you're being, hurtful. Like, not that, but, to be an honest friend. Am I okay with people being honest with me, knowing that they're my friend? Or when someone is honest with me and I disagree with it, do I think that they're no longer my friend because they don't agree with everything that, I think? Or maybe they do have a critique, and I read that critique as they're against me. Am I that kind of, am I so sensitive, right? Am I so wanting to be in control? Am I so insecure that, I just can't deal with honesty? And that's a big question too. Am I able to be honest in a loving, kind way? And in a discerning way. To be honest when it's needed. And if you are untrustworthy, about worldly wealth, untrustworthy. Am I untrustworthy? When people ask me to do something, at my work, do I do it? Or am I untrustworthy? Is that a quality that's people say about me? That he's not really that trustworthy. He's not really available. If you tell him to do something, you might need to check on it because you don't know if they really did it. They're just not trustworthy. Is that part of your life? So Jesus talks about being faithful, being honest, being trustworthy. So those are things that the parable obviously is pointing to. Am I a person who is faithful? Am I a person who is trustworthy? Am I a person who is honest? He says, no one can serve two masters, for you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. So Jesus points out something. Maybe in using the parable, he points to this idea of money and, having that money become an idol, something that, it's everything. How many people have really gone down this road where money becomes the idol? Now, you don't need to be just rich to idolize money. You can be poor and idolize money as well. Money can be everything. It can be kind of where your mind's at, what your mind's on all the time. It's not that you're not to have your mind on money sometime, obviously. But it's that, is it becoming something that's greater than your relationship with God? Is it something that's become everything? Now, the religious leaders would hear Jesus saying these things and be pretty upset because they themselves were very much into money. And money was tied to, there was a system within the temple worship in Judaism that had something to do with money. And it was being manipulated at the time of Christ. And money was being pocketed by the religious leaders. Man, I tell you, money can really grip us. And it can really become a dominant thing in our life to where we lack contentment, right? We're no longer content with, what we should be content about. But we become desiring of more. I watched a movie the other day, and in the movie there was this beautiful home, this gigantic structure. And it was, over the top. It was beautiful. It made me think of how much money did that thing cost? And I wonder what kind of job that person had, those kind of things to afford that kind of house. But then it made me think too of just like, I've been in big houses, I've been in small houses, I've been in trailers, I've been in mansions, I've been in castles. It's like I've been in a lot of houses, and they're all there to make sure that you got a roof over your head, no matter how big or how small it is. And am I okay with that? Or nothing's wrong with, if you want a bigger house, hey, work hard for it. Go for it. But it's that idea of, worshiping money. The idea of, man, totally being, it just riveting your heart. It grabs a hold of you. And that's what everything is about. You become enslaved to it. It's nice when things get paid off and you don't feel so enslaved to the credit card or to the whatever it is that you owe. It's nice to have that kind of freedom, right? Not to feel like you're kind of in bondage to something. And money, a lot of times we all get, caught up in it. And Jesus gives us that warning of not serving two masters. Today I want to be about the business of, Jesus's stuff. Not so bogged down, right, by money. And so, I have to think about that. Hey, God, am I, in my relationship with money, is it such where it frees me to serve you? Or am I always waiting to serve you because I have to do this and I have to do that? I have to pay off this and I have to pay off that first. And I have to, and I really can't focus on the master because it seems like I got another master, that's ruling. And Jesus gives us a great warning. Hey, don't serve two masters, right? For you will hate the one and love the other. Oh, man, totally. Have you ever done that where you loved the wrong master? That's no fun. Jesus is a great master because he loves you. He's fully righteous, fully just, but he's also infinitely merciful and graceful. So a good thing today to focus on, right? Serving the right master. The Pharisees, who dearly loved their money, heard all this and scoffed at him. And then he said to them, "You like to appear righteous in public, but God knows your hearts. What this world honors is detestable in the sight of God." So there you get it. The religious leaders do hear Jesus, and they know he's talking about them. And Jesus says, you like to appear righteous in public. When you go to church, when I go to church, is it a different person? Are you trying to put on a show? Are you trying to look, in a sense, put on your presentable personality? Is it really pretense? And Jesus sees right through it. Ooh, man. And he says, what this world honors is detestable in the sight of God. It's abominable. That's interesting. That human beings, maybe what we do is very abominable to God. We think it's normal. We think it's normal life. But maybe the way we do things and the way our world is structured is abominable. When you look at our society, the way things are, do you think that we are appearing to be righteous? Do you think that that's really what we seem to always be doing? Is we're always trying to appear, whatever side you're on, we're always trying to appear morally right, that we are appearing righteous. And Jesus says, God knows your heart. He knows what's going on, really. And it's quite abominable. Jesus once again puts us in our place. And he's basically saying you can't get over on the deity. You are accountable to God, and he knows all of your reasoning and your motivations and your pretense. He sees the show. He sees, and it's abominable. And that's tough for us to think that maybe we're abominable. But before God, before a righteous God, the Bible declares that I am. I must certainly need some grace and some mercy, right, to be saved. And that's what he offers. It's just, do you want it? Are you willing to come to him and him giving you mercy and grace? Are you going to want to be stuck in your stubbornness? I can do it. I don't need Jesus. I can do it on my own, this salvation thing. It says, until John the Baptist, it says, the law of Moses and the messages of the prophets were your guides. But now the good news of the kingdom of God is preached, and everyone is eager to get it. But that doesn't mean that the law has lost its force. It is easier for heaven and earth to disappear than for the smallest point of God's law to be overturned. So Jesus doesn't get rid of the law. It's not like the law is gone and the effect of the law is gone. The law is there. It's there with me today. The 10 Commandments are right there with me. Do I keep them? Have I kept the law? Am I keeping the moral laws of God? Am I honoring mom and dad? Do I not commit adultery? Do I not murder? Do I not steal? Do I not covet? Or all those things. Jesus says it's all right there. It's still there. It still has its power. Look at it. How do you, how would you rate yourself when it comes to the commandments? Would you say, oh, I do them all. Boy, I'm so good. Or would you go like, whoa, man, maybe I do need saving. When I read the 10 Commandments, I was 17 years old. That's when I first read them. And the first thing I thought when I read the 10 Commandments was, I laughed and said, there's no way that I could get into hanging out with this God. There's no way I would get into heaven. That was the first thing that crossed my mind. It's because how could I do it? How could I? I broke all of them. It's like, there's no way. If this is what it means to be right, then I'm certainly wrong. That was very clear in my mind. So Jesus says, hey, I'm not doing away with, the law is not done away with. No, it still has its effect, its force. For example, a man who divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, and anyone who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. Man, that's a tough word. A lot of people want to maybe talk more, add this and add that and, a lot of stuff to it. And there's some good books on the subject of divorce and remarriage. But boy, could you imagine what Jesus's audience must have thought? What? That's so hardcore. Jesus says, and I love Jesus like that, by the way. I just find it so cool that when Jesus speaks and he upholds righteousness, it is something that cuts to our heart and makes us go, oh gosh, no. Like, oh man, there's got to be a way out. Yeah, the way out is grace. The way out is mercy, his extension of those things, right? Because, all Jesus does is always reveal the rightness, of God. And it certainly shows that our need for saving. right? Always pointing us to Jesus, It always points us that lack that we have always points us to the need of a Savior. So it says, there was a rich man who was splendidly clothed in purple and fine linen, and who lived each day in luxury. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, who was covered with sores. As Lazarus lay there longing for the scraps of the rich man's table, the dogs would come and lick his open sores. Finally, the poor man died and was carried by the angels to sit beside Abraham at the heavenly banquet. The rich man also died and was buried, and he went to the place of the dead. There in torment he saw Abraham in the far distance with Lazarus at his side. The rich man shouted, "Father Abraham, some have pity. Send Lazarus over here to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I'm in anguish in these flames." But Abraham said to him, "Son, remember that during your lifetime you had everything you wanted, and Lazarus had nothing. So now he is here being comforted, and you are in anguish, and besides there is a great chasm separating us. No one can cross over from you to here, and no one can cross over from us to there." Then the rich man said, "Please, Father Abraham, at least send him to my father's home, for I have 5 brothers, and I want him to warn them so they don't end up in this place of torment." But Abraham said, "Moses and the prophets have warned them. Your brothers can read what they wrote." The rich man replied, "No, Father Abraham. If someone is sent to them from the dead, then they will repent of their sins and turn to God." But Abraham said, "If they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, then they to be persuaded, even if someone rises, they won't be persuaded, even if someone rises from the dead." Okay, so the rich man and Lazarus. And what a story, right? But it points back to that idea of, if they're not going to listen to Moses and the prophets, meaning if they're not going to listen to the Old Testament, then what are they going to really, are they really going to be, into me? Jesus, Jesus doesn't want us to go like, hey, I'm into Jesus, but I'm just not into that God of the Old Testament. Jesus at this point really says no to that idea. You might have heard people say that before. But Jesus doesn't give us any wiggle room. He says, man, if they're not going to believe in Moses and trust in the words of the prophets, then they're not going to trust me either. And this is why I always point people to read the Bible. You want to know who God is? Read the Bible. Read from Genesis on. You want to know about the Trinity? Read the book of Genesis, right? You want to know about the Messiah? Read the book of Genesis. Read the first book of the Bible. Just keep reading, and you'll listen to the writings of Moses, to the prophets, and they all are pointing to what God is like, who God, why is God distant from us? Why is there a separation from us and God? And people might, like this parable shows, they might say, well, if God, you do this, then they'll believe. And if you just show yourself in this way, then they'll believe. And that's just not the case. You have a mighty miracle in the country of Israel. You have a mighty miracle that they're actually on the planet. And this people group, this unique people group, and this people group cannot be disassociated with God, the living God. The living God has infused his workings, his power in and through, and has used this nation. And that's what, of course, is revealed in the writings of Moses and the prophets. And that the Messiah would come through the Jewish people, through the line of Judah, a Hebrew. And so the commandments, all this stuff, if you're not going to listen to this, then Jesus says, you ain't even going to believe if I raise from the dead. It's going to make no bones. You're not going to care about it. So do you really want to know about these things? Then pick up your Bible and read. It always freaks me out a little bit when someone says, man, I like the God of the New Testament, but I don't like the God of the Old Testament. I'm like, whoa, wow. What would Jesus say to that? Well, as the parable shows, if they don't if they're not into the writing of Moses and the prophets, and they won't believe in that, then, are they really, trusting in me? You can't just throw out, it's God's work, old and new. Old Testament, New Testament, it's all God's working through the nation of Israel. You can't throw that out. And so interesting, for sure. It helps me in this way. Today, people might have questions. Today, you might have people that want to know something. You could always point them to read the Bible. And that's very simply it. Just say, hey, maybe pick it up and start reading it. Have a pencil with you and just start marking things up, and thinking through it, as you read. That kind of idea. When Jesus tells this parable, it's kind of interesting in that he names people. He gives them names. It's very unique, right? There's some really good Bible study on this as well. But again, it's this idea of that there isn't a heaven to gain, and there is a hell to shun. And man, that's pretty radical to think of, that there's a heaven to gain and there's a hell to shun. And things do matter, about how we are in this life. Notice the rich man and his treatment of the poor. How's my heart? What's my heart like? So, but I love the theme of the chapter. It seems to be like, hey, don't throw out that Old Testament. Don't throw out, don't think I've come to abolish all that stuff. Man, I've come to uphold it. It is righteous. If you're not going to trust Moses, and you're not going to trust the writing of the prophets, can you really trust me? Since I am the one that's upholding what has already been said. So very cool. I love that. So Jesus points us to know our Bible, to know what's been written. And I'm so glad you guys are going through this with me, just as we go through the Bible. Because I'm sure you're going like, wow, I've learned a ton just by going through it chapter by chapter, verse by verse. So super cool. Hey, you guys have a great day. Enjoy it. It's gorgeous. And as you think about the scriptures today, think about, being faithful, walking in a trustworthy way, and I'm sure the Lord will bless you amazingly. You guys take care, okay? Bye-bye.